What do you do when there's only hate left? Bethesda has lost everything at this point. The fans don't trust them, the fans are leaving. Most people no longer identify themselves as fans of Bethesda in general. They just say, oh, yeah, I kinda like Skyrim, but everything else is pretty bad. The people who have supported Bethesda for decades, like Mr. Patty, Luke Steffens, and many, many others, are slowly but surely turning against them and calling them out for being incompetent and completely skillless and talentless. And no one's saying they're wrong, even. At this point, I don't know if it's possible even to find a Bethesda video where anyone's commenting something positive about them. I really don't think it's possible at this point. And the longer time passes, the more people dislike them, distrust them, and are refusing to put faith in it. I mean, let's be real. Starfield, all of its updates, garbage. The Oblivion remaster, completely abandoned. And that one is slowly starting to sting because it's roughly the 1 year anniversary now since Oblivion remaster dropped, and people are not happy. People absolutely hate what Bethesda has done. Well, more specifically, what Bethesda hasn't done.
Today, we are gathering to look back on Oblivion Remastered after 1 year on the market. Now, April last year, we were throwing a party. You couldn't find anyone more excited than me for the release of Oblivion Remastered. It started off as just a little FTC leak where we saw Oblivion Remastered on a sheet full of games coming up from Bethesda, and it was kind of unbelievable because at that point in time, Bethesda had shut down firmly the idea of any remasters or any remakes. Since then, it appears the stance has softened. But as the years would go on,
I think this is all Microsoft, by the way. Because remember, Bethesda also did not want to do movies. Todd Howard was against doing TV adaptations for any of their IPs. He turned down multiple deals of creating adaptation for Fallout. Then Microsoft bought them, and well, congratulations! Here's a Fallout TV show, which did irreversible damage to the brand, which really did. And now we're getting the remasters. And Bethesda obviously did not want to do this because I think Bethesda understood that if they do a remaster of any of the old games, people are gonna love them. And people did love the Oblivion remaster. It was great. Everyone was positive about it, even though the game crashed like every 20 minutes. But a good game is a good game, and people are gonna play. Dragon's Dogma 5 FPS in the city? Just don't be in the city, dude. People ignore these things. But now, a year later, nothing has been fixed because Bethesda is a bunch of spiteful losers and Todd is at the head of them. They refuse to fix bugs. Now, granted, the question is Bethesda even capable of fixing bugs at this point? But in any case, they're not even attempting to make the situation better. Because because the Oblivion remaster just proves how incompetent Bethesda is. That the old Bethesda was better, they made better games, and it was a better time.
we'd see multiple leaks, multiple rumors, everywhere from Reset Era to Reddit to former Virtuos employees to eventually screenshots to Nate the Hate. Everyone was leaking this game, and eventually one day, it was real when Bethesda shadow dropped the game. To great success, might I add, because by the end of 2025, we'd learned that Oblivion Remastered was in the top 10 best-selling games of 2025, beating out the likes of Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which we know that Call of Duty carryover is crazy, Ghost of Yotei, Minecraft, Elden Ring, Night Rain, as well as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and many more. The result on Steam is the game sitting at, with recent reviews, mixed, more on that in a little bit, but also, overall, mostly positive. That's because when Oblivion Remastered had launched, it had issues. The rumor originally was that this game was supposed to come out in June, but it was our belief that maybe Xbox and Bethesda collectively shoved this thing out the door and decided to shadow drop it, maximize sales, patch it, and then move on. That's exactly what they did. Update 1.1 brought general fixes to the game, everything from crashes, which I still experience to this day, to gameplay fixes and system fixes, but Update 1.2 showed a
These are probably the biggest patches Bethesda has ever done, by the way. The reality is the UI doesn't matter. The audio doesn't matter. The quests, well, some of them matter, but most of them don't. And from the crashes, most of this is light stuff. You need to understand, the reality is a huge patch for Bethesda, because I'm not joking when I say they're incompetent. Look at the Starfield updates. That is still supposed to be their flagship title game. It's supposed to stand right there, shoulder to shoulder. Well, in this case, probably split roasted in the middle, because that's more Bethesda style nowadays. Between them, because it's one of the big three, the bottom three. In any case, and they don't update it. They don't fix it. When they fix a bug, the bug's probably not fixed. And the same thing happened to the Oblivion remaster. Bethesda does, like roughly maybe 3 fixes here matter. Of all of this ginormous patch, like maybe people care about 2 or 3 things here. Everything else is fluff. No one cares. And chances are, these things aren't actually fixed. Bethesda just says they're fixed, but they're probably not actually fixed. That's their history.
A little bit more of what Bethesda could do to continue tweaking Oblivion's experience. On top of crash and quest fixes, they also added in a new setting for a journeyman difficulty. This would allow people to play between the adept and expert difficulty, because damage scaling, level scaling is a huge issue with Oblivion, and this was basically putting a band-aid on a hole in a sinking ship for Bethesda that didn't quite fix everything, but at least there wasn't this dramatic jump between, again, the adept difficulty and expert. It was just such a wide gap. So it massaged one of the game's issues, but one of the key points in this update also were the performance fixes, which you see here: fixed frame drops in very specific areas of the map. They optimized different parts of the game, whether it be its weather system or the character animation system. Still, there was plenty of work to be done because, again, as I talked about in my impressions video and follow-up videos, I was having a lot of crashes, a ton of frame drops, and I'm usually not a perfectionist with that sort of performance stuff, especially with a Bethesda game, and as a lifelong Bethesda fan, I don't expect...
Even if you don't care about a frame drop here or there, or a crash here or there, it's still a negative thing, and it is good to point it out, okay? The fact that you love a game doesn't mean that that this is a good thing to not be critical about its performance. Dragon's Dogma 2, great example. Great game, ran on literally 3 FPS in cities. Still a great game, and people ignored it. But the fact that it was its performance was that poor initially, definitely needed to be noted.
Much from them, but it was pretty unbearable for me with this. So I was happy to see, as confirmed here by the Economic Times, that Oblivion Remastered, after its update 1.2, was actually going to do an update 1.3. That never happened. That's what brings us to the conversation here today.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. That's probably when Todd understood, wait a minute, if we update this thing, it's going to outperform everything we have done in the past decade and a half, so we can't do it. So Todd probably pulled the plug.
Because Oblivion Remastered, a year later, is still in a lot of ways a great video game. But Oblivion Remastered, a year later, is also a video game that was just suddenly abandoned. And I think I know why that was the case, but I want to dive into it today because the conversation was brought back up not by annoying Bethesda fans like me, but by Digital Foundry, who posted the headline, "Yup, Oblivion Remastered is still broken a year after release." So of course today we're going to get into Oblivion Remastered, what's wrong with it nowadays, but also it's about the broader conversation. It's about looking ahead to other Bethesda remasters that we know are on the way, like Fallout 3. And of course, answering the question that a lot of us are asking, will Bethesda, will Virtuos ever circle back around to Oblivion Remastered and tighten this thing up?
No.
I have answers for you, so let's dive into it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new here and you're into what's going on.
Granted, I say no, but yes, by the way, like the video right now. It takes less than a second, and thank you for everyone who does. Now, granted, I am saying no currently, but there's probably gonna be like half a year later some kind of small patch that fixes like 3 things, and Bethesda's gonna be like, it's our biggest patch yet. Because they have literally done this. Again, we're talking about the company who has never made a game with an FOV slider in their lives. Yes, this is not a joke, by the way. Not a single Bethesda game has ever had a FOV slider in it from the start. And this is a thing that everyone knows they're not gonna ever put into a game, and a thing that everyone begs them to do. And the reason why Bethesda doesn't put an FOE slider in their games from beginning is the most diabolical shit ever. Because you see, Bethesda knows they're incompetent. So they can't really score good boy points like any other game does by fixing issues and making stuff better. But they can do things like not include the FOV slider and 2 months after put in the FOV slider and say, we did what the community wanted. That's what they have done historically. I'm not making this shit up, by the way. You can look it up. Skyrim, Starfield. They literally did that. Intentionally.
Design phase when it comes to the apportioning blame, which sandwiched the original game's architecture within an Unreal Engine 5 front end. Both of these elements are notoriously CPU and GPU heavy, so the combination presents with extremely poor frame time stability that gets worse the longer you play. Still, the lack of updates suggests that Bethesda didn't feel like meaningful improvements were possible, and not even making the attempt feels worse. This is frustrating because, again, we go back to the sales sheet that we were talking about. We don't have hard numbers here, but we know that Oblivion Remastered had millions and millions and millions of players, and we know now that it was a top 10 selling game, at least in the United States.
Where is it? The Oblivion Remaster, I'm not seeing this. Battle, NBA, Sad, Borderlands, Monster Hunter, COD, Madden. This has to be some kind of... it says... It does say PC platforms, but does it actually? Does this not include, like, you know, Steam sales or something? Where is the Oblivion Master? I'm not seeing it. Interesting.
The fact that Bethesda couldn't support this alongside Virtuos for more than
But Ghost of Yotei has below 2 million sales up to this point even. So, where the hell is it? Oh, right there, right there. Okay, so Ghost of Yotei has less than 2 million sales than this being here. Yeah, it does make sense. Let's check out.
2 months is kind of insane to me. The game clearly sold enough where Bethesda should have had the resources, Xbox should have had the resources to continue.
Listen, Matty, it's not about the money. It's not about the money sometimes. For Todd, it's just to save his legacy of not being a complete failure, okay? It's not being good, it's not fixing things, it's just, here's my legacy of not being as trash as everyone, especially that guy called Quasar77 believes I am. That's the game's name. There is nothing deeper than that.
To tinker with this game, to get things like, hey, it doesn't get worse the longer you play, it's fine. That sort of stuff should have been ironed out, it never was. This sparked a broader conversation within various
Also, you know, unironically, do you think Bethesda is gonna fix bugs for this? Their solution for Starfield not running properly was telling gamers that you should buy a new PC.
Comment sections, Reddit threads, Twitter, just social media in general, about Bethesda just completely abandoning this game and why that is the case. And will they ever return to Oblivion Remastered? Well, it's possible. This year, they actually might, but we'll see. You see, they're actually releasing Oblivion Remastered on Switch 2 this year, which sounds about as terrifying as you can imagine, but Bethesda has been very supportive of the Switch 2. Earlier this year, they released Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition on Switch 2, and to my surprise, it was actually really great. Now, I say to my surprise, not because I just want to dog on Bethesda, but because just a couple of months before that, here comes Bethesda with Skyrim Special Edition on Switch 2. Which, by the way, yes, you're remembering correctly, they already had Skyrim on Switch and working fine, but the Switch 2 version was significantly worse. So much so to the point that Bethesda did not change the fact that gesture controls would be active even if your Joy-Cons were connected, so you would have insane input delay anytime you pressed a button while playing Skyrim on your Switch 2. They would eventually come around to fixing...
Oh, right, that thing. By the way, this is an understatement. The situation, how bad it actually was you press left, and then you need to wait roughly 1.5 seconds, and then it only moves left. It was that bad. And I'm not joking. This is, like, documented.
And Skyrim on Switch 2 is great now, but it did take some time. So the quality mark for Bethesda on Switch 2 has been hit or miss. You have, ironically, a Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition that is quite good when you compare it to how we felt about Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition when it launched on PC back in November. And then you've got the launch quality of Skyrim. So when you look ahead to something like Oblivion Remastered, the reality is, hey, they are working on a new version of the game, and they may be tweaking things for when that version releases to update all platforms. And you'd have to imagine some sort of optimization has to be done to get this thing working on Switch 2. Switch 2 is an awesome system. I think it's more powerful than it gets credit for, but we're talking about Oblivion Remastered here, which when I'm running on a very powerful PC, it still struggles. So my hope, which is really my cope, is that probably if you're trying to get it running on Switch 2, optimization work is being done. Although we've seen some really bad Switch ports in the past, so who knows with that. But maybe that optimization work can carry over into other versions of the game with a big old Oblivion update. Another reason why people are hoping for more support with Oblivion Remaster is it sold extremely well, and you see what, in the rumor mill at least, CD Projekt Red is likely doing with The Witcher 3, where they are trying to bring a DLC that bridges the gap between the end of Witcher 3 and into the beginning of Witcher 4 to kind of hold people over until The Witcher 4 is out. This could turn into a standalone game, we don't know for sure yet, but it was my hope that Bethesda and Virtuos would continue to support Oblivion and maybe even make brand new content for it. There's another reason why I think that Virtuos could circle back to Oblivion Remastered, although it still feels like a little bit of a crapshoot, but I do look at something like Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition. Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition launched, and it was, to put it lightly, pretty horrendous. I really love the Outer Worlds, y'all know that, but Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition looked worse, ran worse. It was literally a what the hell happened moment for the Outer Worlds, which was at that time a pretty loved game, but as time has gone on, people just continue to say it's bad, and I don't agree, but nonetheless,
that's because it is bad.
Spacer's Choice Edition certainly didn't help with that. This, as I largely covered in the lead up to the launch of Oblivion Remastered, was also made by Virtuos, but Virtuos also did circle back around and continue to work more and more on Outer Worlds Spacer's Choice Edition until now, where it is fine. At least in my experience, it's much, much better. They fixed the visuals, which were completely busted, like the eyes looked terrible originally. They fixed the performance. It runs and looks a lot better, probably how it should have at launch, but it took a lot of support to get it there. And I'm glad they did this because now it's like the definitive version of the game. Obsidian just announced that they're taking the original Outer Worlds off the market and they're only selling you the Spacer's Choice Edition. So I'm glad they fixed it. Now, I don't really anticipate Bethesda ever doing that with Oblivion, but since we've seen that this can happen, I would hope that they would tune up Oblivion Remastered.
Bethesda works fully off of pride. If anything damages their look, their pride, they don't do it. It's that simple.
To the most stable form it can possibly be in case they decide one day to say, and yep, this is the definitive version of Oblivion forevermore. I know it sounds impossible, but again, we see it with small case examples like this, where you have Outer Worlds' original copy being pulled off the market. Can that happen as well for Oblivion? I hope not, but again, another reason why they should get back to it, and it is possible with Virtuos' history that they do launch busted things and then come back and fix them later. Why this has all become a full conversation for me and many others out there is not just because, again, in someone like me who covered this game pretty aggressively and then put very little hours into it by comparison because it kept crashing on me, and I'm not by any means completely like firm on if your game is not running at a solid, stable, endless 60, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, I can deal with a dip here or there, that sort of stuff. It happens, whatever. But dude, this game was dipping constantly. So when I wasn't crashing, I was dipping, and it became kind of unbearable.
Oh yeah, I remember those videos at the start where the dips were insane. They were very, very feelable.
And I just dropped it, which is not a good feeling at all. I guess effectively I returned the favor to Virtuos after what they did to us as customers, but the reason it becomes a conversation is, again, you look at the Bethesda roadmap. You see that Fallout 3 Remaster is there, and if this schedule from the FTC leak is to continue to be accurate, you add 2 years to any fiscal year here.
It's not accurate. The meme was before 1 year, now it's 2 years, now there's exceptions. It's not accurate in the slightest.
Here, and a Fallout 3 Remaster should be coming out late this year or probably sometime next year. Combine that with Halo Campaign Evolved having a very similar infrastructure as mentioned in the Digital Foundry video. I didn't even consider that. Halo Campaign Evolved is also rebuilding its campaign on Unreal Engine 5, and we already know gamers have a very soured opinion on Unreal Engine 5, and I'm just worried about what a Fallout 3 Remaster situation could look like already. Not even just the launch product where, again, I don't want to oversell, Oblivion was disastrous by any means, but it was at times, at least for me, a little bit unplayable. And they did try to do the work to fix it, but I don't think they stabilized it entirely. And if that happens again with Fallout 3, I know myself as a gamer, I'm patient enough to see it through and be like, okay, cool. It's at the point I want it to be at, even if it took a little bit of time, sure. But now we can't even guarantee that because it only took a couple of months for Virtuos and Bethesda to move on, presumably to Fallout 3 Remastered. And this is the double-edged sword I've talked a lot about in our Fallout content. I've mentioned a number of times that for all of us in the Fallout community, myself included, who have been begging Bethesda for more Fallout video games, this is probably the price we paid. I think they moved on from Oblivion and went, fine, we got to accelerate Fallout because people want more games. 76 is doing its thing, but we need more games.
I'm pretty sure 76 has already crashed and is below what it should be to be sustainable.
Show is kind of hype right now, and if we kind of trust where Season 3 is going in a certain
Wait, what? It's kind of hyped right now? I'm pretty sure it's not hyped at all. Season 2 was very much abandoned. I haven't even watched it. I saw a couple of spoilers, and I saw how absolutely disgustingly they ruined the canon of New Vegas. I was like, nope, I'm done with this. I'm not watching. And most people did not watch. Most people did not play 76 also, because most people are normal people who do not like shit.
Action they're focusing on, Fallout 3 might be a little bit more relevant, and people might want to play Fallout 3 a little bit more. And also, with Season 2, we saw...
People don't want to play Fallout 3. Everyone knows that New Vegas is the remaster of remasters. It is the thing, and after that I would say it's the Oblivion remaster, obvious. Not the Oblivion remaster, but Morrowind. You know, that's the remaster I wanted instead of Oblivion, but whatever. It has to be New Vegas. That is the most anticipated remaster of Bethesda.
How much the demand for a new Fallout game was out there, given the fact that a Amazon-focused teaser, which just ended up being a location reveal. Nothing crazy at all. That got so many people in a stir that it was going viral.
I absolutely love that people expected that it's going to actually be more than that.
Viral endlessly that there would be a new Fallout video game. So I imagine part of the reason Oblivion Remaster got dropped was because they had to get the Fallout 3 Remaster as quickly as possible. But again, my concern is like, well, then what's the baton pass from there? A lot of people are also asking for a Fallout New Vegas remaster or a remake. Did we quickly move on from Fallout 3 to get into New Vegas before?
Nope. Todd's gonna find ways to delay New Vegas indefinitely. Todd is never allowing New Vegas to happen. And if it does happen, I am pretty sure he is gonna be willing to sabotage it to the extent that he even loses his career. I fully believe whatever happens, Todd is firmly in the shoes of Fallout New Vegas must be forgotten and destroyed no matter the cost at this point. Oh boy. You know, and the easiest way to do that, if it's forced on by Microsoft, is to hire his #1 assassin, Emil Pagorino, to write the story for it, and everyone knows it's gonna be complete shit if that happens. So, you know, it's gonna be dead. No matter the cost, okay? In any case, it's over. People don't trust Bethesda, and they can't change it. I mean, the Oblivion remaster is just pissing people off. Trust is at 0. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.